Colleagues, we are grateful to the Secretary-General for his brief introductory statement at our meeting today, and we listened very carefully to briefings from the Special Representative of the Secretary-General, Volker Perthes, and the representative of UN OCHA, Joyce Msuy. We're also grateful to the heads of the African Union mission to the United Nations, Fatim Mohammed, and we welcome their participation in today's meeting of the permanent representative of Sudan, Al-Harith Idrissa, and also representatives of the region. The Russian Federation is deeply concerned by the clashes in Sudan since the 15th of April between regular armed forces and the rapid support forces. We've been following developments very closely. The humanitarian situation is deteriorating, and in many regions of the country there are shortages of food and medicines. Attacks on diplomatic mission staff and representatives of international organizations accredited in Khartoum are particularly alarming. We agree that the relevant task today is to carry out evacuations from combat zones. We'd underscore that it is not only UN staff and Western nationals who are in dire straits in Khartoum, but also other foreigners and also Sudanese people themselves. Their problems deserve equal attention. We welcome the efforts of all Sudanese forces who are working to ensure the safe evacuation of people who wish to leave the country, and also the responsible approach demonstrated by the neighbours of Sudan who are providing support to this process. We must state that the current crisis in Sudan is, to a large extent, due to external interference in its sovereign affairs and attempts to engage in political engineering and impose democratic formula on them. The political situation in the country was difficult from the very beginning. Sudanese political forces were fragmented, and their cooperation was under colossal pressure due to historic, ethnic, economic and other factors. This is also true of the relationship between the army and the rapid support forces. Security sector reform in the country was one of the most complex issues, which required increased attention to be paid to it and a painstaking negotiation process. However, what we saw was that many external players artificially forced through a process for the transfer of authorities to civilian forces and imposed a lot of decisions that were not accepted by vast swathes of the population. A host of countries trumpeted the political framework agreement from the 5th of December 2022, but it did not turn out to be an inclusive platform for the various Sudanese forces. Several political heavyweights were left out of this format. This was unlikely to have fostered a comprehensive resolution. The provision of sorely needed international assistance to the country was directly tied to the transfer of authority to a civilian government. As a result, the imposition of so-called democracy through pressure and blackmail, the fragile stability in the country was sacrificed. It is also disappointing to see in the context of the activities of UNITAMS, who very recently reported to the Security Council about its achievements. We, on many occasions, drew attention to the fact that UNITAMS should not focus its efforts only on one aim, which is reaching an ultimate agreement, but ignoring at the same time a whole host of issues in its mandate. As a result, the crisis in Sudan caught everyone off guard. Colleagues, in the region, efforts are continuing to reconcile parties. We note the mediation work carried out with the African Union and IGAD, and also neighbouring countries. We note this agreement reached over the weekend on a ceasefire, which will allow for for fighting to be less intense in the Sudanese capital. However, it has not been able to stop the fighting completely. Regional players should provide a necessary space and time. Would be provided with the necessary space and time. It's critically important to not repeat the experience of Libya, where African political efforts were haughtily cast aside and Western country's use of force wrought havoc on the country and destabilised half of the continent. It's important that all mediators act in a united way in order to calm the situation, independent of their possible national interests. We fully support those colleagues who today spoke about the unacceptableness of any external interference in the sovereign affairs of Sudan, which could add fuel to the fire. And also, it could turn the country into a platform for geopolitical plays, particularly those provocations carried out by Western media at the moment. We are certain that citizens of Sudan can and must resolve their domestic problems themselves, and they are fully able to do this and decide who is a friend and who is not. We call on the warring parties to demonstrate the political will and undertake immediate steps for a cessation of hostilities. We believe that any disagreement can be resolved around the negotiation table. Colleagues, in conclusion, we wish to reaffirm our unwavering readiness of the Russian Federation to continue to provide assistance to a friendly Sudan, to successfully overcome the current difficulties and return to a path of peace and sustainable development. I resume my function as President of the Council. I now give the floor to the representative of Egypt, to Sudan. Apologies.